The drama North of 60 premiered in 1992 and for 6 seasons captured the spirit of the First Nations people living in the Canadian wilderness. The series was shot on location in Grant Creek, Alberta, which is a few hundred miles south of the show's fictional setting. Actor Tina Keeper played Lynx River's local law enforcement officer, Michelle Kennedy.
North of 60 was a series really about a town, and it really was about the relationships between people in terms of family, in terms of a small community, and I think that that's why it succeeded.
In order to portray true stories of Aboriginal life, series creator Barbara Samuels consulted with Native elders and was surprised at how willing they were to help out.
The idea of confiding in people they'd never met was something astonishing. That people would do such a thing, to have a bunch of white people walk into a community and say, we want to talk to you, and people say, okay, fine.
For producer Tom Cox, portraying Aboriginals in an accurate way was key to the show's success.
North of 60 was perhaps unique in terms of the need for authenticity. It's depicting not just a town in the north, but a native culture at a particular time in the evolution of native culture in Canada.
To make sure the series stayed true to life, a group of Aboriginals called the Dene were consulted with. They were the first settlers of an area of Canada now known as the Northwest Territories. North of 60 brought their heritage to the small screen.
We were as careful as we could be within an artistic framework to ensure that we were always including the Dene people who understood the language, the landscape.
One real story shared with Samuels was about the horrors of attending a government-run residential school.
It was very emotional and very distressing and very psychologically explosive.
North of 60 writer Rebecca Schechter did further research on the troubling history of residential schools.
They would virtually kidnap the children and bring them out of their natural lives into these boarding schools. And the idea was that we had to civilize people.
The system, first set up in the 1800s, had the goal of oppressing native culture.
They forbade the children from speaking their native languages, and they shamed them for being native, and they shamed their lifestyle, and they shamed their parents. That experience has had a tremendous, devastating long-term effect on all of the Aboriginal peoples in this country.
The contentious issue was fictionalized in the powerful episode Sisters of Mercy, when Michelle Kennedy has to face a residential teacher who abused her years earlier.
She was really devastated by her residential school experience. It was harsh, it was brutal, and it nearly broke her.
Besides giving voice to the Native experience, North of 60 was also influenced by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
It was the first show to get official permission from the RCMP to use their name, logo, vehicle, uniform. All of those are protected by an act of Parliament.
RCMP Superintendent Greg Peters was a technical consultant on the series.
In the case of North of 60, detail was the order of the day to ensure that Canadians, when they viewed this, felt that they were really in an RCMP detachment.
The RCMP took an enormous leap of faith here because they were not portrayed by any means as angels. They were portrayed as flawed human beings who had to deal with personal demons.
Real members of the RCMP are often assigned to work as the lone cops in outlying Canadian communities. One North of 60 storyline was based on a true event involving an officer posted in a remote location.
The inspiration was, in fact, a real officer in the north who basically had just come unhinged from the isolation, from a lack of sort of familial support. All of those things had built up to the point where he actually took his RCMP vehicle apart piece by piece and was, in a sense, dismantling his existence there.
In the episode Walking with Ghosts, Officer Brian Fletcher, played by Robert Bockstael, has a mental breakdown and disappears into the wilderness, erasing his own life from the community. In the original script, Fletcher commits suicide, but the RCMP intervened.
Because the show was heavily watched in those northern communities, we thought that if this Mountie was to commit suicide, that it would have an amazing negative impact on those communities that we served. So, to their credit, they changed that scene. We were extremely proud of the relationship we had with North of 60.
For 6 seasons, North of 60 engaged a diverse audience with images of the Canadian wilderness and gave a voice to the spirited people who lived there.
The series was transformative. I was shown things that I never would have seen had it not been for people's generosity and willingness to open themselves up.
I enjoyed the work from the beginning, and we had so much fun working on the show.
Coming up.